Dr. Vusi Sibanda. He is the chairperson of the African Diaspora Network, and we're going to be talking about 14 South Africans amongst dozens held in Zimbabwe for immigration offences. A very good morning to you. Welcome to the program.
Good morning to you and good morning to the viewers and listeners, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being with us. So, Dr. Sibanda, we understand that 14 South Africans are amongst over 70 foreign nationals behind bars in the country, and that, of course, is Zimbabwe. And apparently, the offences are for crossing the border illegally. And the Zimbabwean Human Rights Commission says that these people should not be held in prisons. They should be deported immediately. So where are we now on this matter, and why do you suppose the Zimbabwean government is wanting to imprison them and not deport them?
Well, look, I think for starters, because this report is actually coming from the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, it actually shows, that the concern is about the humanitarian affairs, of these people that are imprisoned for immigration laws, and understanding the state of the country in Zimbabwe, that these people do not have any other criminal offenses that they are being charged with, but ideally illegal immigration. And the reason for that would actually tell you that it's obviously lack of knowledge, maybe or because they end up in there and they don't know what they have to do to extend their visas. Because if they had crossed into the Zimbabwe with a valid, passport, they would ordinarily walk to any immigration office in Zimbabwe just to extend their days, and it doesn't cost them anything, at all. But because they know, they would find them, in this situation where they, end up being arrested, because there is nothing that Zimbabwe has that these people have gone to steal from Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a very poor, poverty-stricken country as we speak, and it cannot even overburden its taxpayers by holding, people that have come into the country either for some business to try and, better the economy, whatever the reason might be, or that are in good relations with Zimbabwean, that could be relatives of some Zimbabweans through marriage or so forth, and keep them, in detention. And this is what has always been said even here in South Africa, that look, immigration cases must be treated purely as immigration cases, not criminal cases.
And as you rightly say, Zimbabwe is a very, very poor country, and you kind of wonder, why would 70 immigrants or more be in the country illegally? Because clearly there are no work opportunities there. Perhaps they're just passing through the country and violated some visa regulations, as you've also indicated, simply because of the lack of knowledge. What happens now that the Human Rights Commission has gotten involved? Do you think that they could put pressure on the Zimbabwean government to rather deport these people than have them imprisoned? Again, as you've indicated, it's costing the Zimbabwean taxpayers the extra tax burden of keeping these people in the country, even if it's under very, very dire conditions.
Well, look, I think the saddest part is that the Zimbabwean government is a government that is not known to listen to, even the Lawyers for Human Rights and other commissions that it has actually set up to try and promote, democracy and human rights. So we know that definitely, the government of Zimbabwe is not going to listen to that. But in fact, the government of Zimbabwe sometimes has got a sadistic way of doing things, that they may actually take pleasure in the fact that, they've got people that are arrested for, illegal immigration in Zimbabwe, so that they may wake up tomorrow and say a very stupid line like, well, look, we've got foreigners that are coming into the country, so we even arrest people who want to come to Zimbabwe. When what we are saying is basically that, yes, people do want to go to Zimbabwe, because some of them, as you might notice, that there are people that might be married to Zimbabweans and that have just gone there because they have established relations and they have no, desire to do any harm or to do anything wrong. And because of the lack of knowledge on how to go about in dealing, with the issues of, extending, their visas, they end up finding themselves on the other side of the law. So we know that, the Zimbabwean government is not likely to do anything, but, we know the criminal justice system in that country is so dysfunctional that people will stay for months on end, without being tried, just being kept on remand, as we have seen with other political, prisoners in that country. So this is something that might appear to be something of interest, for their own particular caption, to show that, well, Zimbabwe is open for business. It's actually attracting foreigners. And now they are coming into that particular country, even without knowing, or having interviewed these people to know that why were they coming to Zimbabwe. Of course, we know there is opportunities in mining, because the whole country has become a mining space where everybody mines wherever they want to. And anybody who's unemployed might actually go as well to do that. Not that they are doing it illegally, but they will be arrested nonetheless.
So what's the way forward for these 70 people that have been detained? We also know that human rights are suggesting that Zimbabweans, the Zimbabwean prison can only hold 17,000 prisoners, but the population often exceeds this capacity. That being said, very especially in the case of the 14 South Africans that are held there, how do you suppose we need to be moving forward as the South African government to have them released with immediate effect? And then perhaps that will have a positive impact on the other immigrants. Hopefully their governments can also put pressure on Zimbabwe to release these people, to have them deported back home.
Well, look, this is a very, tricky situation, because South Africa, houses or arrests a lot of Zimbabweans that are in South Africa illegally. And because there are no negotiations that are real open, to try and assist these particular, individuals that are arrested, and the Zimbabwean government is not moved. I mean, they might have commented, but they have moved to try and have these people, are released. So it will be very difficult, and the Zimbabwean government is going to be very curious to see how this real works. And that's why I said, initially, that it might look like a trump card for the Zimbabwean government, that they want to comment either negatively or so. But I think there is no harm in basically trying for the South African government to try and ascertain that, what exactly is it that they have been arrested for, or what is it that they have been doing, so that they can be released sooner. Because we have seen, people in Zimbabwean prisons really emaciated, thin, and showing that they are not properly fed. They are, there's disease there and all that. So a caring government should, just not stand back simply because of the situation, because the South African situation and the Zimbabwean situation are very, very different. There are push factors and pull factors into South Africa, whereas there is almost none in Zimbabwe. So those people that find themselves there, they are unfortunate to be there, because they are not there, to create unemployment or ordinarily to commit, crimes, as would be, said. And, there is nothing, for them to do there, because the country is almost, dysfunctional. So I think the South African government, through JECO, might need to real move in there. Though, of course, they might be worried that should they do that, they then open a door for Zimbabwe to start also saying, well, if they've got people of their own interest, then they want them to be released. And there is quite a lot of them that are in the South African prisons for illegal immigration.
To wrap up then, as chairperson of the African Diaspora Network, are you involved at all in any of these discussions to try and get the foreign nationals deported, together with, of course, the human rights organizations?
Well, in this particular case, we hadn't started. Of course, I mean, we've only heard from the lawyers for human rights that have just contacted us to let us know, and to say, how do we best deal with this kind of a situation, because we've ordinarily been involved with a lot of cases, for people that are arrested for immigration cases. And we are set up to have, a meeting, I mean, sometime later on, virtually, with the lawyers for human rights, to try and assist on how best they can move around with it. And we're hoping that we can engage with the ambassador, of Zimbabwe here in South Africa, who has always been.
Okay, we've lost Dr. Vusi. Are you still there?
Yes, I am here. It's just that, I'm using my mobile. So, you've got these advertisers, calling. And but yes, we are set and scheduled to have a discussion with the ambassador. Yes.
Thank you very much. We'll leave it there. Thank you for your time. And we do hope and pray there's going to be a positive outcome for these prisoners. Thank you. God bless and go well.